Tonight, the grim search for the missing on Maui, trapped trying to escape the wildfire.
People lost everything.
The devastation, the emergency response.
It just happened so fast, there was no warning.
And the stories of survival as hundreds of evacuated Canadians return home. Canada's worst wildfire season ever could now be its longest.
This year's already devastating season is not yet over.
The fire forecast right into the fall. The customers pushing back on self-checkouts.
Frustrated and angry.
I don't work for them.
The Canadian stores moving away from cashiers.
This is The National with Ian Henemansing.
Days after raging wildfires swept through parts of Maui, rescuers are facing the difficult task of combing through rubble, searching for the missing. With so little warning, it's believed many were unable to escape the flames. At least 67 people are now confirmed dead, officials warning that number will rise. And tonight, for the first time, residents of Lahaina have been granted partial access to that devastated historic city. Once home to some 12,000 people, now little more than rubble and ash. CBC News is on the ground in Hawaii tonight, where so many are still waiting for news about loved ones, homes, and properties. Magda Gabarsalasa begins our coverage.
Paradise wiped out by wildfires, buildings, homes, and lives in Lahaina destroyed.
Devastation, everything gone.
John Singer stands in front of the charred remains of the home he tried desperately to save.
I sat up on top of the roof and I battled the fire for about 3 hours. I couldn't do it anymore.
As the flames moved in, he jumped into the ocean to get away. This video on social media apparently shows others waiting to be rescued. The sheer speed of the fires, driven by powerful winds, caught many off guard.
So many of us residents felt like we had absolutely no warning.
Hawaii's governor has pledged to review the state's emergency alert system. Warning sirens were not activated before the flames hit Lahaina. Alerts did go out through TV, radio, and on cell phones, but were limited by widespread power failures and cellular outages. Many people couldn't get out in time, leaving dozens dead and many more missing, including this woman's father.
I wanted to force him to come with me, but he was very hard-headed and he didn't want to come.
While search efforts continue, rescuers comb the remains of homes and buildings with sniffer dogs as help pours in from across Hawaii and beyond.
My old neighborhood's gone.
Jesse Jaspel is helping to run a shelter in Honolulu for those that got out of Maui.
It's a gut wrench, but I'm here on this island so we can help the people that are coming. So that's my holy grail.
Just set it right here. We'll sort it for him.
And the help keeps coming. At Hawaii's state capitol, donations, big and small, are dropped off.
These are people we know, and these are our friends, and these are our families, so we're going to give everything we can.
Yeah. We're just trying to collect whatever we can, donate whatever we can. Nothing is too little, nothing is too big.
The flames in Lahaina are now mostly contained, but recovery will be slow, costing billions of dollars and years of rebuilding.
And Magda, some have fled Maui for Honolulu, where you are tonight. What are people there telling you?
Well, people are heartbroken and they're shocked, and that's true of those that left Lahaina and those here in Honolulu that have been trying to help them. I spoke to a lot of people today who have family members in that community, who have friends in that community, and some were describing how their loved ones were fleeing their homes because of these flames, and now they're staying in other locations. Other people are taking them in. But one of the things I continued to hear from many people is that they're going to keep fighting to support those people that are affected by this. I kept hearing that people here in Hawaii are family, whether you're related or not, and that they're going to continue to support everyone like family and see them through this.
All right, Magda, thank you. Hundreds of Canadians have been evacuated from Maui following this disaster, many who saw the devastation firsthand. Ellen Morrow has their stories tonight.
The firestorm was was overwhelming. I mean, it was huge. I've never seen anything like it.
Mark Morris took this photo, capturing a moment of terror as fire raged near his partner's home.
To see it moving and to realize that there's nothing man-made that can stop it is pretty horrifying.
The Canadian from Vancouver has lived on Maui for 16 years. His loved ones and property are safe, but Morris is heartbroken for the place he's come to see as home.
I actually awoke crying that the impact on this community is going to be so great.
Global Affairs Canada says it's not aware of any Canadians injured in the disaster, the agency asking tourists not to travel to the island. Hundreds of Canadians have returned home, with WestJet and Air Canada putting on several evacuation flights. The devastation from the air staggering.
It looks like a war zone out there. It really looks like somebody came along and just bombed the whole town. It's completely devastated. It's burned down to the ground. It was.
Canadian Brandon Wilson and his wife were celebrating their 25th anniversary.
We're going home, but a lot of people, their lives have been really affected and devastated by this, so it's not easy.
Evacuees are arriving in Vancouver. Jessie Watkins filmed her escape, fleeing as the fire closed in.
It just happened so fast, so you could just see the fire coming at you. So eventually, people just drove through the barricades because it was the only way to escape.
Thousands of Canadians travel to Hawaii every year. Morris hopes those who love Maui and Lahaina will help in this hour of need.
There are some great charities that people can make donations to. The breadth of historical loss is really immeasurable.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
And coming up, we'll take a closer look at this wildfire, why it burned so intensely, spread so quickly, and caught so many off guard. That's in about 20 minutes. Dangerous fires are also burning in this country. Tonight, there are more than 1,100 active wildfires. 728 are out of control, and the situation is not expected to improve. Federal officials are now saying the fire season could extend into the fall. It's been an especially difficult season for those on the front lines. And as Mira Baines tells us, some are calling for reinforcements, including requests for a new national force.
This summer's wildfire season is being described as a challenging marathon, and there's no end in sight. An exhausting and difficult season taking its toll on firefighters.
So obviously we're responding to incidents and putting everyone on the line that we can to support the province, but so there's no real time to stop and process, what's happened to other members of the organization.
Emotions have been running high with 4 deaths on the front lines. Now word crews could be busy into late summer in some parts of Canada.
Through August, fire risk will continue to be significant between BC and Western Quebec, with areas of highest risk along the BC coast, eastern and northern Manitoba, and eastern Ontario.
This year, 13.54 million hectares have burned across Canada, a huge increase over the previous record set in 1989, when close to 7 million hectares of forest were destroyed. Canada has needed help. About 5,000 wildfire fighters from around the world have joined efforts. There are calls for the federal government to develop a national firefighting force.
It would really benefit all Canadians if we had a standalone wildfire fighting force of maybe 400 or 500 individuals who are well trained and could be deployed across the country where they're needed.
Experts say it could help get fires under control more quickly.
If you had a national firefighting agency, then it's all our home territory, and we can move preemptively before the situation becomes extreme.
Federal government officials say the focus is on investing in existing systems, announcing Friday $400,000 for training to fight fires that threaten communities. But nothing is off the table as hotter, drier conditions fuel the worst fire season Canada's ever seen.
And Mira, here in BC, we're bracing for a heat wave in the next few days.
One of the fire experts we spoke to says he's very worried about next week as the heat wave hits.
The higher temperatures and lack of rain are making conditions even drier in the province. Already the ground is very dry. In BC, 28 out of 34 water basins are at drought level 4 or 5, which are the highest on the province's scale.
All right, Mira, thank you. And in Ottawa, they're dealing with way too much rain. Some residents cleaning up after flash flooding.
Well, it was a lot of water, a lot.
There was so much rain that it popped off the lids off the sewers.
More than 75 millimeters of rain fell over 6 hours, hail just adding to the misery. It was enough to turn busy roads into canals and force many drivers to abandon their cars. And for some, there was more trouble indoors. In this bathroom, so much water pouring in the toilet and sink, well, you can see what happened. Ottawa's had a lot of extreme weather already this summer, including 3 tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. And by the way, more rain is in the forecast. Quebec billionaire Robert Miller is facing growing legal trouble. Several more women have come forward saying he paid underage girls for sex. A total of 29 women are now hoping to join a class action lawsuit. All of them say they were under the age of 18 when they met the businessman. The allegations were first reported by a CBC Radio-Canada investigation in February. Shortly afterwards, Miller resigned from the company he founded, Future Electronics. The U.S. attorney investigating President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, now has special counsel status that gives him more powers to investigate. As Ashley Burke tells us, ahead of the next election, this case is already politically charged.
Another American first, a sitting U.S. president, now his son, and a former president, all under investigation by special counsels.
I'm here today to announce the appointment of David Weiss as a special counsel.
That announcement, a bombshell in the Hunter Biden case.
It also reaffirms that Mr. Weiss has the authority he needs to conduct a thorough investigation and to continue to take the steps he deems appropriate independently.
My name is David Weiss.
Donald Trump first appointed David Weiss 5 years ago to investigate Biden's son Hunter for alleged tax crimes. Last month, he agreed to a plea deal. Hunter Biden would avoid jail time by pleading guilty to charges for filing his taxes late and illegal ownership of a gun. But last month, that controversial deal fell apart.
Will the two sides come back to the table and restore that plea deal that fell apart? Or is it going to be basically retreating to your corners and preparing for battle? And from every indication of what happened today, it looks like a trial is imminent now.
The Attorney General expanded Weiss's investigative powers amid growing criticism claiming Hunter Biden got a sweetheart deal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The case is politically charged, seized by the Republicans who've held hearing after hearing into the Biden family, alleging more serious crimes. Some now call this latest move to appoint a special counsel whitewashing.
This was a political decision, not a legal decision. They're trying to put out a fire, and they just poured gasoline on it.
So you've got 3 key figures here. 2 of them are likely to be candidates in the next election, trying to get back into the White House. This not only marks the next chapter of these investigations, but it's uncharted territory for the U.S. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Washington.
A U.S. federal judge issued a protection order today for evidence in the 2020 election case against former U.S. President Donald Trump. It bans him from publicly discussing sensitive information like witness testimony. Prosecutors had wanted a stricter order covering all evidence given to the defense team. The RCMP and Alberta are investigating after a fuel truck collided with a train northwest of Edmonton. This collision happened in White Court. You can see the flames and the thick black smoke in the air. No deaths have been reported. Police were asking people to stay away from the scene because explosions were still possible. And it took 100 firefighters to battle this blaze this morning in Toronto. They managed to get things under control, but a fire official said they'll be tending to the site for another day or two. No injuries at this industrial site, and officials say there is no danger. Not far west of that fire today, the Premier of Ontario took more heat over plans to develop land that was once protected, known as the Greenbelt. But Doug Ford is standing firm. Ithil Musa shows us what his critics make of that.
Premier Doug Ford is refusing to back down from plans to build on land that was part of Ontario's protected Greenbelt.
We're going to continue building homes.
This week's scathing report from Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk found the move to free up 15 lots was heavily influenced by a small group of developers. Ford categorically denies that.
No one had preferential treatment.
Yet, according to Lysyk's report, developers who had access to the housing minister's chief of staff at a dinner last September wound up with 92% of the land that was removed from the Greenbelt.
There's the issue around the public trust and the violation of the public trust, the violation of rules and regulations.
The Ford government removed 3,000 hectares of land from the Greenbelt last December while adding more land elsewhere. Part of a provincial plan to build 1.5 million new homes in the next decade. A message highlighted on the day Lysyk's report was released.
That's why your Ontario PCs are focused on building more homes closer to transit and homes families can afford by unlocking more land.
These 5 land sites represent...
But Lysyk says unlocking more land is unnecessary. Writing in her report, chief planners in the regions of Durham, Hamilton, and York, which are home to all 15 sites removed from the Greenbelt, told us that Greenbelt land was not needed to meet the housing targets.
We're in this tension. We have a housing crisis. Let's build as quickly as possible. But hold on a minute. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that we throw out due diligence. It doesn't mean that we throw out processes.
Opposition New Democrats have now formally asked for the Ontario legislature to be recalled. They want to reinstitute Greenbelt protections for land they say was removed through a biased and negligent process. The Ford government, meanwhile, insists construction will move ahead according to its plan. Ithel Moose, the CBC News, Toronto.
In the UK, a government plan to house asylum seekers on a barge has fallen apart. It was to be part of a tough and divisive migration strategy for a country that sees hundreds of new arrivals by boat every day. Margaret Evans explains what happened.
The white cliffs of Dover, the new beacon in recent years for those seeking refuge or simply a better life in England, risking much to reach them. 755 people arrived on Thursday alone.
They're just heavily overloaded. But the second thing is that they're being brought through the shipping lanes, and the dinghies have got no navigation.
The over 100,000 people who've arrived this way since 2018 account for less than 3% of overall migration to the UK. But it's still a dangerous journey and a political football. Trailing in the polls, the Conservative government here has turned "Stop the Boats" into one of its rallying cries, much like the old Brexit campaign slogan, "Take back control of Britain's borders."
Focus on
Anand Menon says the government wants to keep the issue in the headlines.
The reality is far more complex than government rhetoric about bringing down immigration would suggest. But if they can appear tough, they'll at least manage to, hopefully, persuade their base that they're acting on this issue.
Around 75% of asylum claims made here are accepted, but a processing backlog means applicants are put up in hotels with a daily price tag of around £6 million. Last month, a British court rejected a government plan to send thousands of asylum claimants to Rwanda, calling it unlawful. Taking its place in the headlines is a floating barge called the BB Stockholm, docked in Dorset and kitted out to house 500 asylum seekers. A few dozen were transferred earlier this week, but some others have refused to go, claiming potential trauma. Refugee rights groups are scathing.
It seems to be a knee-jerk reaction to a crisis around the asylum system.
For now, though, no one is sleeping in those beds after tests confirmed the presence of Legionella bacteria in the water supply. The asylum seekers who had moved to the barge have now been taken off again. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
The bodies of at least 23 people who were fleeing Myanmar by boat have been recovered. 8 people were rescued after their boat sank in the Andaman Sea. 30 are still missing. They're part of the Muslim Rohingya population, an ethnic minority in Myanmar. Thousands of Rohingya make the dangerous journey to Malaysia or Indonesia every year, fleeing what the UN has described as a possible genocide. Self-checkout is beginning to outpace traditional cashiers, but not everyone's on board.
I don't work for them. I think what they should rightfully do is offer me a discount.
The pushback from some shoppers and the issues around accessibility. Plus, marking 50 years of hip-hop and its evolution.
Last name ever, first name greatest.
How Canadians have and continue to make an impact on the genre.
That was not a thing we really imagined for ourselves.
And granting the wish of a young Savannah Bananas fan.
It was VIP, right? Yeah. Or the bananas say VIB. Very important banana.
We're back in 2. Many Canadians have been desperate to travel again, and Air Canada's revenue is reflecting that. The company says it's earned a profit of nearly $840 million in its last quarter, nearly $500 million more than the same time last year. Experts say it's due to higher ticket prices, strong customer demand, and lower fuel costs. Nearly all of the government-owned Liquor Mart stores in Manitoba will close this weekend due to a labor dispute that began in July. Wages, the main sticking point. Self-checkouts are becoming more and more popular, but some shoppers say they're upset after finding no cashiers at their stores. As Sophia Harris tells us, experts warn that is a bad business decision.
Linda House says a recent shopping trip to her local Walmart in Edmonton was a painful experience. She says there were no cashier lanes open, so House, who has multiple sclerosis, had to scan her own items at self-checkout.
I was in fairly excruciating pain. I was exhausted. I went home and I went to bed with painkillers.
There's no doubt self-checkout is gaining ground. A new study analyzed more than 1 billion shopping trips to U.S. grocery stores last year. It found that self-checkout accounted for more than half of customers' transactions.
For the first time, we saw a majority of checkout happening at self-checkout. I think people are obviously looking for convenience.
But there are still many shoppers who want to check out with a cashier.
I'm disappointed.
Bob Valkov is now boycotting Canadian Tire because during several recent visits, he says there were no cashiers open, only self-checkout.
I don't work for them. If they are asking me to go through the process of being a cashier for them, then I think what they should rightfully do is offer me a discount.
Some people hate it, some people love it.
This retail expert says shoppers remain divided on self-checkout, so stores should make cashiers available or risk losing business.
The customer experience is so key today because there are so many more choices that customers have today. They can shop on Amazon.
Canadian Tire says individual stores make their own checkout policies. Walmart says it determines staffing based on the needs of each store, and that all stores have employees available to help at self-checkout.
Frustrated and angry.
House says during her recent shop, the self-checkout attendant declined to help. Walmart is now looking into her case. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
As we get a better sense of the damage in Hawaii, we're learning more about what led to this disaster.
Hey, if anybody's still out here, it's time to go!
Andrew Chang breaks down what made this fire unique.
Even if it rains, the hot weather dries it right up. That's pure fuel for fire.
Let your backbone slide.
And Canada's role in the growth of hip-hop.
He said to me, there'll never ever be a Canadian superstar rapper.
How some artists are defying the odds. The National takes you deeper into the stories shaping our world.
I'm unschooled to the rules, yeah. Too come shoot, too much of a newcomer, and too uncool, just like Shadow in the...
Tonight at Yankee Stadium, an all-star lineup is celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. Here's Lupe Fiasco getting the crowd going. From its birthplace in the Bronx, hip-hop grew into a cultural movement and a commercial powerhouse. Canada has a long, rich history of hip-hop, but it hasn't always been easy. Tonight, Eli Glasner asks Canadian artists if they're getting what they need to share in all that success. And the conversation started before Eli could even sit down.
What's your first like Canadian hip hop experience? Like what is yours? I'm curious. Like,
are you rolling? Yeah. Because you're taking my first question
Oh,
out.
really?
My first. All right, but we're gonna trade then. We're gonna go back and forth. I gotta say, I had a VHS tape, and I played the crap out of that Northern Touch song. I loved it. My favorite was Thrust.
Thrust, I'm like an other style that you wanna represent, present. In other words, I pay the rent from the past to the present and the future.
Shout out to Tom Green, Organized Rhyme.
Okay.
Check the OR, you like it so far. Check the OR, you like it so far.
Wow, yes.
Sorry, not sorry. Kish, I could mention Kish, right?
That.
So I grabbed the pen and the rhymes I started jotting. Tales of turn of a trip that will make to amaze. I rhymed the world in 80 days.
What about you? What first Canadian hip hop?
First Canadian kind of, I guess it would be Missy Me.
Jamaican. I'm the Jamaican.
If Mishimi is the queen of Canada's hip-hop history, then Maestro Fresh Wes would be the king who created a cross-border hit back in '89 with... Even then, Maestro was looking south.
My main market is the States because that's where, or England because that's where rap is large.
Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge.
In the Bronx, where hip-hop was born, artists like Grandmaster Flash had taken the Jamaican style of toasting and created rap.
When you leave a ring around the basin, when you wash your basin, it might sink.
In Canada, a similar cultural stew was bubbling.
Hip-hop is really a fusion of like Jamaican culture and like North American culture, North American black culture, which happened in Toronto also.
This rap historian and DJ says at home, hip-hop pioneers faced an indifferent industry.
It took time for the gatekeepers in Canada to think about their creative and cultural industries in a globally competitive way rather than sort of a navel-gazing Canadian kind of way.
By the early 2000s, things were changing.
There was an embrace of like, you had artists like Cardinal, Chaclair, Socrates. You had artists like Ghetto Concept.
And then in 2009, the kid from Degrassi took Canadian hip-hop higher than it had ever gone before.
I'm more than just an option.
I think Drake's contribution to hip-hop coming out of Canada can't be overstated.
Just so I can make it rain.
I remember that moment of seeing these songs with like the video with Eminem, Wayne, and Kanye. That was not a thing we really imagined for ourselves.
Today, hip-hop music is the biggest genre in streaming. Last year, 29% of all streams in the US were R&B or hip-hop.
Forever mine, ever mine.
But for Canadian rappers looking to follow Drake's lead,
That is comparing apples to oranges. We don't have 330 million people to consume music in our country.
Swing, swing swords.
and yet there's a new wave. Rappers such as Akintoye, Baby No Money, using TikTok to find their audience.
Shorty dance for a minute.
Emigrating from Jamaica to London, Ontario, King Kruff is bringing the island flavor back.
I feel like they still view hip-hop as like the little stepchild sometimes. Like hip-hop's kind of like the one that's like asking for attention, or that's like, yo, like there's actually some talent here.
From the early days of block parties in the Bronx to dance battles in Montreal, Canadian hip-hop has always defied expectations.
Never forget having this one phone call with this executive, and he said to me, there'll never ever be a Canadian superstar rapper. I will never forget that conversation. And that's just an example of like how far we come.
And for the next generation, the party's just getting started.
The future is going to look so bright. So I feel like right now is just, we're in a moment of patience, and I see it paying off heavily in the near future.
So Eli, what are the big challenges for hip-hop musicians in Canada today?
Well, size matters. I mean, Canada is not that big a country compared to the US. One of the executives I spoke to said that you could actually, in some ways, reach more music fans just focusing on New York State rather than trying to make your way across Canada. So there are structural challenges, and even with changes to funding, changes to the Junos, there still is what David Cox described to me as this conservative mindset, this idea that many artists feel they still have to go outside of Canada to get that validation.
So big challenges, but still a positive vibe?
I mean, the magic of hip-hop is that it's this disruptive, almost revolutionary force. Think of how it began, taking these two elements and combining them together and creating a whole new sound. And so the music will find a way, certainly the musicians will find a way, whether it's with the industry or using the internet to go straight to fans themselves.
Gotta say, I love the top of that story you did, Eli. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
From dry land to a distant hurricane, the conditions in Hawaii were primed for disaster.
Those powerful winds make things really hard for firefighters.
Why the Maui fire was so destructive and so deadly.
When I was down there early, there were uncles and people I know in the street dead.
Another difficult day for residents on the island of Maui as some return to what's left. At least 67 people are dead, entire blocks of homes and businesses destroyed by flames. Despite Hawaii's extensive public warning system, survivors say they were caught off guard. Andrew Chang shows us how this firestorm started so quickly and spread so fast.
Oh, we made it. We're going to line on the road now pretty soon. Somebody down right now.
The disaster proving to be the deadliest wildfire here in the U.S. in years.
Hey, if anybody's still out here, it's time to go!
Utter devastation on the Hawaiian island of Maui. At least 53 people are dead.
It's been about 3 days of hell now. Dangerously strong winds have fueled monstrous wildfires, destroying entire neighborhood blocks, killing dozens of people, and seemingly catching an entire state off guard.
Hi, my name is Mason Jarvie. I'm a resident of Lahaina for about 18 years, and we just had the worst disaster I've ever seen. All Lahaina is burnt to a crisp, and it's like an apocalypse.
The scale is what makes this so devastating. You know, once upon a time, wildfires were actually quite rare in this part of the world. Maybe lightning or even lava might cause a fire. But over the decades, people have tracked these wildfires, now mostly human-caused, and the average area burned each year spiked 5-fold in the last century.
Tiari, have you ever experienced or seen these kinds of wildfires before?
Yes, in 2018, we did have family members lose their homes. Like he mentioned, this isn't new to West Maui, you know, where the combination of wind and drought obviously creates fires, but never at this scale. Never would I imagine that I lived through seeing my entire hometown go to dust. And that's basically what Lahaina is today.
So take a look at this. The BBC put together a slider, kind of a before and after of a very popular, very busy part of Lahaina. So, you know, this right here is the Lahaina banyan tree. You know, if you've ever been there, it's this kind of living, breathing testament to just how storied this part of town is. It was planted in the late 1800s. The oldest, certainly the largest living tree in the state. The harbor is right here. You know, you can buy ice cream here. There's a restaurant just across the street. This is a surf shop, I think. You know, most of these are just homes, but there's a church right here with a cemetery right beside. But this is what Lahaina looks like now. And you can see almost everything just gutted. The banyan tree may survive. You know, it was completely burned, but those roots go pretty deep. But everything else, I mean, I'll just do a quick back and forth. This is what Lahaina looked like before the fire. This is what it looked like after. It's all gone.
I was the last one off the dock when the firestorm came through the banyan tree and took everything with it. And I just ran out to the beach and I ran south and I just helped everybody I could along the way.
He talks about how the fire ripped through the banyan tree and took everything with it.
Within an hour, the flames had moved all the way down to the end of the neighborhood.
A lot of people think dry vegetation has a lot to do with the speed of these fires. Much of the grass in Maui is a non-native Guinea grass that grows really fast. It outcompetes the local strains, and even if it rains, the hot weather dries it right up. That's pure fuel for fire. But there's also the wind.
We never anticipated in this state that a hurricane, which did not make impact on our islands, will cause this type of wildfires.
This radar map shows Hurricane Dora, that's passing from right to left at the bottom of your screen. It's almost 1,000 kilometers away from Maui, but even still, caused wind gusts on the island in excess of 100 kilometers an hour.
60 to 80 mile per hour winds helping fuel that movement of the fire over dry brush in the area. That's why it's been able to move so quickly into this residential area. And unfortunately, that's been really hampering rescue and firefighting efforts.
Those powerful winds make things really hard for firefighters. They can cause small fires to flare up, they can ground helicopters trying to water bomb an area, and they can knock down trees and power lines, blocking road access. You can see from this footage just how treacherous it can be to drive through an area, even long after the fire has moved on.
We're just at the end of our vacation here, a week stay in Lahaina, Maui. Yesterday we lost power at our hotel, so we figured it would be a good idea to get to the airport early. The drive normally takes 45 minutes, took us over 3 hours to get here. Along the way, we observed several fire trucks driving in the opposite direction, headed towards Lahaina, and we did see evidence of brush fires in the dry brush in the hills.
Just go, people, go, beat the horn, Dad. Oh my God, bro. Oh.
There would have been thousands of people fleeing the western part of Maui all at the same time. You know, you may have already seen stories where people got cornered by the flames and had no choice but to flee towards water.
Victims jumped into the ocean to escape the flames and smoke.
It got really real when we saw the flames, and I had to think fast. We had to get out. We left our vehicle, and myself, my wife, and our 5 kids, we all got in the ocean. We found a floating board that we hung onto, and we think we were out there floating. It was just so surreal, and everything was burning around, explosions, cars blowing up. We stuck together, we held on, and we're not gonna die this way.
But most others, if they don't have family or friends to go to, head to one of several evacuation centers that have opened up.
All right, Sam here, and I am in Wailuku, Maui, and what you can see here behind me is one of at least 5 different evacuation centers. Lahaina is still getting evacuated. Look, we've got buses just pulling people up, so they're still evacuating Lahaina.
This is not a safe place to be. On certain parts of Maui, we have shelters that are overrun. We have resources that are being taxed.
For those evacuees, the urgency has shifted from escape to just getting a hot meal. When there's no room, people sleep in their cars.
Yeah, my name's Jamie Brown. I live in Lahaina, Maui, Puamana neighborhood. Got home about 4 o'clock yesterday from work. Smoke in town. My son and his girlfriend and 2 kids were at the house, and we evacuated immediately. No cell phone coverage, no internet, no way to contact the outside world. And we got to this side of the island about midnight last night. My wife and dog, and slept in the parking lot at Whole Foods. Woke up this morning and got on our phones to pictures of our house, just down to the slab. Nothing but smoke, cinders. Came with the clothes we got on and a dog and 2 kids. Here we are.
There are countless people right now who are still desperately trying to reach out to loved ones to see if they're okay. But for many, that is next to impossible.
Anything that was on the ground that assisted in getting any kind of communication has been burnt or partially burnt or destroyed.
Emergency crews have gotten by with radios or satellite phones. Crews are working block by block, trying to restore power and communications. But the fear is that because critical fiber optic cable was damaged, it could take weeks, maybe even more than a month, to fully repair.
I live in the town of Lahaina, and we did have to evacuate my home because the town is gone.
There's no way around it. Lahaina is a war zone. The lucky ones are stranded at airports, waiting for a flight home. The unlucky ones have lost their homes, their pets, their families, or even their own lives. Rebuilding will take years. But the concern now, save as much as possible. Save lives, save property, and save hope that tomorrow will be a better day.
Hawaii's governor says it will take years and cost billions of dollars to rebuild. Jose Bautista is calling it a career, and he's doing it as a Toronto Blue Jay. We'll hear from the former Jays slugger. Plus,
it was VIP, right?
Yeah.
Or at the banana say VIB.
Very important banana.
Totally.
the Savannah bananas make a kid's wish come true in our moment.
And it's going to burn you. No doubt about it.
The bat flip may be the most iconic moment of Jose Bautista's incredible career. Today, the former Blue Jays outfielder signed a one-day contract so he can retire a Jay.
It's huge. Obviously, I owe a great deal to this franchise. They gave me a chance, and I was able to accomplish a lot here.
Fans will get another chance to cheer on Bautista on Saturday. The powerhouse slugger will return to Rogers Centre to receive the club's Level of Excellence Award. His name will be displayed alongside other Major League legends, including Joe Carter and Roy Halladay. In soccer, both Spain and Sweden advanced to the semifinals of the Women's World Cup, Sweden knocking out Japan 2-1, while Spain beat the Netherlands by the same score. The other two semifinalists will be decided tomorrow when host country Australia meets France and England takes on Colombia. Well, meet Mark Lane, also known as Swaggy. He's a 10-year-old from Massachusetts who suffers from an illness that causes several hundred seizures a day. Recently, Mark was asked what he wanted most, and he said he'd like to become a Savannah Banana, the baseball team known for their dancing and fun antics. Well, Make-A-Wish delivered and gave Mark his big moment, and tonight, it's our moment.
So Mark was nominated for Make-A-Wish. Swaggy's wish was to be a Savannah Banana for the day.
They held a press conference for Mark where everyone was holding signs and cheering for Mark. It was just like a press conference that a new baseball player signing a contract with.
It was so cute.
What's it like being famous instantly?
And so they had Mark, when he put his jersey on, they had him unbutton his jersey. So he was sort of like chest flying, warming up with the team. And then the game starts, and him and his brother are hanging out in the dugout with the players and dancing and interacting with the fans.
It was VIP, right?
Yeah.
Or at the banana say VIB.
Very important banana.
Totally.
And so it was really, really cool just to see him do all these things with the players, because they were just so welcoming, not just of Mark, but of our whole family. It was beyond even what we could have imagined.
He is cool, and that nickname Swaggy, by the way, is because he has to wear sunglasses and a hat when he's out playing baseball, for example, because he's super sensitive to the sun. Some kids teased him, but another kid said, hey, you know what? You have swagger, hence the nickname. That is a national for August 11th. I hope you join me Sunday for Cross Country Checkup, live on CBC Radio and CBC News Network, and later that night, I'll be back here for the National. Have a great Saturday.